It looks like it is streaming. All right, terrific. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I'm 10 minutes late. Again, this is a live stream that I put on every week at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's live, so you can participate along with this conversation. You can ask questions, leave comments in the live chat. After this is recorded, I will chop it up. I started experimenting with chopping it up last weekend or last week, and it appeared pretty well to do. So the goal there is that if you look at the YouTube analytics, people have a tendency to watch 10 to 15 minutes instead of 50-minute chunks or an hour chunk at a time. I'm Scott. I'm with C14G. You can find us on c14g.com. We offer small and medium business solutions, small and medium business cybersecurity solutions. That can range from VPN concentrators, remote work solutions, SNMP monitoring, so you can take a look at your environment, the network connectivity, your server connectivity, your disk I/O, your all the things that SNMP communicates with. You can set up alerting so you're more proactive instead of reactive. So again, you can find more information out about us on c14g.com. Our primary focus is protecting your company from the internet inside, also from the employee going out, which is one of the largest risks you have to operations of your company, right? So we focus on those things, and we want to provide alerting so you know what's happening on a C-suite level down to an engineer level, so you can accurately report, you can pass certifications, ISO certifications, and if you have an audit, you have that information readily available, so you look like you're a competent company doing the right things to protect your customers, your management, and your employees. So with that, like I said earlier, this is a weekly broadcast, a live stream that we do on YouTube. Obviously, you're here on YouTube. We will probably be moving part of this, the audio only, over to a podcast of some sort, but that just hasn't happened yet. We're trying to generate a little bit more excitement and try to spread the word. So if you have the opportunity, please share this, press like, press subscribe. You can do the alert notifications. Again, our goal is to make your life easier as a business owner or as a business operator or even as management, because a lot of managers, based on the experience I've seen as a manager, don't really know what's going on the technology side of their company. So with that, let's get started. We have a lot to go through today. I had about 15 articles that I captured in the last week about cybersecurity news. I picked the ones that popped the most, that would have the most impact, and we're going to discuss those now. So this is our website, c14g.com. This is, if you wanted to get a hold of us, at the bottom of every page, there's a contact form, and if you wanted to look at our services, those are available to you as well. So we do have a free evaluation as long as we can get a hold of somebody at your company so we can run a port scan or an external threat report on your environment. We don't want to do that without your permission. So take a look, see what we have to offer. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Our phone number and all that fun stuff is right there on the webpage. So that being said, we're going to start off with, this is a big one. So T-Mobile investigating claims of massive customer data breach. So they're investigating claims of it, meaning they don't even know if it happened, right? One thing I have a tendency to point out in this channel is that a lot of these companies don't know data is stolen until it's too late. So one thing that we focus on as a company is you should never be sending, as an example, a PDF file with live social security numbers on it to a client, right? PDF files are perfectly open, readable context that anyone can read. Open email is an exchange where if you have access to that data flow, you can read that email. It's all open text. It's getting better with encryption, but because the other side isn't encrypted, it ends up being mostly clear text anyways. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. The long story short is there's a lot of things your company should be doing, and if you don't know if they're doing it, you should start asking your technology people. You want to prevent private information from being emailed out, from being shared in a file out externally. If you have Dropbox, whatever that case may be, you want to be doing DNS proxying, which means Your category blocking, you don't want someone to look up terrorist websites or how to sell drugs on your company website. You also want to be doing geolocation services. There's no reason somebody from pick your country needs to be communicating with your environment unless you're doing business with them. So you want to lock those down. As a tendency, Russia and a lot of these countries that don't have any legal jurisdiction in the United States, that's where most of these ransomware attacks come. Ransomware, if you're not familiar by now, is an attack on your internal systems that encrypts all your network files and encrypts all your servers, and everything to the company is locked. Unless you pay money, you can get that key unlocked. I've single-handedly worked with about 30 to 50 of these through various different companies. They are devastating to a company. The typical answer is restore, but ransomware is getting better, and they're starting to infect backups. They're called time-released ransomware. So if you have a backup with the ransomware in there that says every 90 days, go ahead and release it. If you restore a backup in 90 days is tomorrow, it's still going to happen whether it happened or not, whether you restore or not. That being said, if you don't know your restore procedures, or your RSOP, I think it's called, how long it takes to get back up online, you should definitely know that. This should be something you test either monthly or quarterly by doing a bare metal restore, a snapshot restore, an individual file restore, and if you have the capabilities, an email restore if you host your Exchange premise online. These are all things that are there to keep your insurance companies happy and to make sure that you are not losing revenue by paying payroll while you're down. A typical ransomware takes about a week, depending on how big the infrastructure is. In the small, medium business, on the enterprise, it could take much longer than that. So this is why it's important. Also, if you do have government contracts, they require certain security things be in place, such as certain ISO certifications. So if you want more business and you want to be able to hit those big money makers, you need to protect your network, make sure your operations are as bulletproof as they can be. That being said, there is no 100% way to protect from everything. It doesn't exist. There's just too many avenues. However, those avenues, they start to tighten down, right? So as you start to secure your network, the only option may be if somebody gets into the server room and has access to the physical server, then they can do X, Y, Z. Well, if you're locking your server room or you have badged access into your building or whatever that case may be, you have nothing to worry about, right? So that's the goal. You want to take the big, easy targets and you want to eliminate them so you don't have to worry about it. So, sorry, let's continue here. Hackers are selling the data. Hackers selling the data are claiming it's affecting 100 million users. Again, this was released by hackers. T-Mobile didn't say, oh yeah, we know that this is happening, meaning that they most likely don't monitor for metrics on SNMP monitoring or NetFlow or whatever that case may be, right? So if you have shared storage or network attached storage, usually those devices are SNMP capable. SNMP stands for Simple Networking Messaging Protocol, I think, or simple, I forgot exactly, but the long story short, it's a communication that has become pretty much standard. I should know that, so I'm sorry I don't off the top of my head. It's like not knowing that a tire goes onto a wheel that goes onto a car, right? So my fault. But that being said, it is a messaging platform for all these various networking attached devices to report metrics on, right? So you can do two things. You can do SNMP traps, or you can do just pulls from the data, or you're pulling information on a scheduled time, right? So that being said, they can grow exponentially depending on what you have and what you're monitoring for. One recommendation we have is if you do have an SNMP monitoring tool out there, such as PRTG or SolarWinds or the other one I can't remember, Ozabix or something like that, don't set it to auto discover and report on everything. That is not how you use proper monitoring. That's not how you use proper reporting. And the system is going to be so noisy that everyone's going to just treat it as spam. They'll probably create a rule in their email for spam. They'll just delete messages if you have SMS messages sent to key people. It's just too much data, right? That being said, you should have a targeted monitoring in place. And if you need help with that, again, we can be found on c14g.com, or you can call us at the number on that site, 904-600-4412. So continuing, one thing I do if you haven't watched these before is I point out the wording that's in these articles. A lot of the time, the wording is very vague. And if you'll notice, they're not the ones reporting it. They're the ones that think this may have happened because the hackers say it happened. Meaning, again, they didn't spend the right time or the right money to put these in place. If you do it after the fact, it can literally cost your company billions. Equifax.com is something I constantly refer to. We all know that the credit reporting agency Equifax leaked, I think it was 100 million or 80 million people's social security numbers and very private information. They ended up paying I'll just say 1.1. I can never remember if it's 1.1 or 1.4 billion dollars to put changes in place afterwards. You know, nothing like $1,000 million to spend because you waited too long. They probably could have spent a third of that, a quarter of that throughout 10 years, and they would have never have had that happen. So a day after the article was published, T-Mobile confirmed that in announcements that it suffered a data breach, right? They didn't know until the hackers said, oh, we're selling the information. The original story failed. T-Mobile says it's investigating a forum post claiming to be selling the amount of personal data. The forum post itself doesn't mention T-Mobile, but the seller told Motherboard, which is a website, told Motherboard that they have obtained data related to over 100 million people, and that data came from T-Mobile servers. So one thing we keep running into is that these private companies are not spending the time, money, resources, and they have no legal slap on the wrist for saving money instead of spending money and getting into the What if they release social security numbers, date of birth, address, security questions that are constantly used everywhere, phone numbers, and then somebody takes that information because I can buy it. This is how it was determined, right? If we go back to the top of the article, hackers are selling the data of 100 affected that affects 100 million users, right? That this information is for sale all over the place. And the benefit to this is you can easily steal someone's identity. But the point being is you're getting to the point where these companies aren't doing their due diligence. They're not paying for the right employees. They're not paying for the right skill set. They try to get one employee to do 10 or 20 things instead of the one thing that they really should be focusing on. There's no accountability because typically the managers aren't engineers. It's really hard, no matter what field you're in, for an engineer to want to stop being an engineer and move into management. Usually that happens in a scenario like me where you start your own company. But the point being is that a lot of these managers aren't engineers, so they don't know what to ask for. They don't know what's true or what's not true. They don't know what's a red flag. They don't know what's an alert versus a warning. There's a lot of things that go into this. Most of the small, medium business sector, this should be starting with your operations manager. However, realistically, operations manager is as someone who's been one, is such a vague term. If I'm an operations manager, I need a service manager to worry about the service desk side. I need an alerting manager to worry about the alerting side. And it's my job as an operations manager to make sure that operations for IT in this scenario are up and operational and the managers are doing what they're supposed to do, right? So continuing on, the forum post itself doesn't mention T-Mobile, but the seller told Motherboard, we said that already. The data includes, according to them, social security numbers, phone numbers, names, physical addresses, unique IMEI numbers, which you can back to a specific phone, and you can prove a user with that. So, like, if I were buying automatic weapons, I'm here in the United States, obviously. If I'm buying automatic weapons that aren't for sale here in the United States, if you were to find out my EMEI number, that can be tied to me, right? So if you only see a EMEI or a phone number that says made this transaction, you can legally say, okay, we've proven that this number now belongs to Scott Zupek, so Scott Zupek obviously bought these, regardless if it was me or not, right? So let's say I lent my phone to a friend, a drug dealing friend or a cartel friend or whatever, who knows, and driver's license information. That's a big deal. Motherboard has seen samples of the data and confirmed they contain accurate information on T-Mobile customers. Now, obviously, the only person that's going to know if it's accurate and up to date is T-Mobile themselves, as they own the data. I don't think Motherboard would be able to determine if it's an old database or not, but more than likely, this is live data, or it was at some point. So now we have a quote: T-Mobile USA full customer info, the seller told Motherboard, is an online chat. In an online chat, the seller said that they compromised multiple servers related to T-Mobile. And then we have a transcript. Do you work at T-Mobile and know anything else about this breach? We'd love to hear from you. Using a non-work phone or computer, you can contact this person, and notice it's out of on Wickr or whatever, right? So Signal is a messaging platform not in the United States. I believe Wickr is as well. On the underground forum, the seller is asking for 6 Bitcoin, so around 270,000, for a subset of the data containing 30 million social security numbers and driver's license. Right? With that, you can open loans. There's all types of things that you can do that realistically have no consequence to you if you're doing it outside of countries that hold jurisdiction in other countries. The seller said they are privately selling the rest of the data at the moment. So it was 100 million that was stolen. He or she is trying to sell $270,000 worth of 30 million account informations. And then we have another quote. I think they already found out because we lost access to the backdoored servers, right? So what does the backdoored servers mean? It typically means that an IT person doesn't want to connect to a VPN, so they poke a hole for easy access for SSH or some other internal port, so you can get in there and do whatever, right? And when that happens, there's just no need for that. But again, who's holding the engineers responsible? If you poke a back door in so you can connect from home and you don't have to go through the VPN because it's slow or whatever the case may be, then 1, you're not using the right VPN technology. 2, that employee is lazy. And 3, look what can happen because of that. Port scans are done all the time on all internet connections, whether you're home or business. There are nefarious automated bots running to try to see if somebody created a backdoor so they can get into your system and hold it for money, right? And businesses have a tendency to lose more. You know, if I get Gene or Granny Smith down the road Granny Smith down the road, and I steal all of her pictures, I'm only likely going to get a couple hundred, maybe $1,000 out of her. But if I do it to GE or I do it to a Fortune 500 company, they've got millions of dollars to pay me. And they're going to lose way more than millions if they don't pay me. So it's a better incentive for me to do that. That being said, if I am a hacker in this scenario, and I'm not going to spend all this time targeting one specific company, I'm going to target the easiest target, right? I'm not going to shoot for the hardest, smallest pinpoint and try to figure it out. You know, I'm going to say, okay, what's the biggest target? What's the easiest method? Bam, I'm in. Hopefully they pay out, right? That's why you want to take security and lock it down as much as you can, to the point where usability is still usable, right? I'm a big fan. I come from a programming background. That's what I wanted to be as a child growing up. That's not where I ended up going. I'm about to sneeze. Sorry. Turns out I'm human after all. But anyways, people are always trying to find a way in. I forgot lost my train of thought thinking about too many things while streaming here. So anyways, looks like they closed the back door. They said that although it appears T-Mobile has since kicked them out of the hacked servers, the sellers have already downloaded the data locally. As I always mention, they could have been in here 90 days. They could have been in here a year and a half. They could have been in here 10 days. There's no way of really knowing how long a hacker's inside a company in these scenarios, right? If the hacker is the one telling you I stole your data, you're doing security wrong. That being said, to get to the other end of that, there's a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of resources that go in. That's why building your computer environment from the start is so important. Building it right from the start. Don't take shortcuts. Don't use a product for what it's not intended to. Don't hire one type of employee and ask them to do other employees. I see this all the time in the messaging or in the employment field. I want to hire a database administrator who actually is an Active Directory guy or woman and knows how to build web pages. No, go hire a web page developer. Go hire a database administrator or a database SQL programmer, and then go hire whatever else. Stop asking your IT staff to go do this, that, and the other thing. I don't blame companies for it, but it's getting to the point where you guys are creating the problem because you are too essentially cheap. You don't want to cut into your profit margin to hire and protect the right things in place, or the things that you're responsible for. As a company, if I take in credit card information from somebody and I hold that credit card information in a clear text format anywhere on my company, I'm now liable as a company to pay for any customer I've ever had that has their identity stolen, because that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to encrypt that data. It's not supposed to be accessible to people in your network. It's supposed to be a very tight, secure network. That's why PCI compliance is so important. And that's why it's there, right? To hold companies accountable. Let's get going. It's backed up in multiple places. That's the data stolen. T-Mobile said in a statement to Motherboard that we are aware of the claims made in an underground forum and have been actively investigating their validity. We do not have any additional information to share at this time. T-Mobile repeatedly declined to answer follow-up questions since the scale of the breach. This is from Vice.com. As I always do, I will include a link to every single article that I reference in these weekly broadcasts inside the YouTube description. And if you found us on c14g.com, you can click on the YouTube video. It'll take you straight to YouTube. We do post these on YouTube. We do post these on our website under the blog. So it's easy to access if you're blocked or if there's some reason you can't get to youtube.com. That being said, I watch most of my YouTube content on Android TV. So unfortunately, if you're on Android TV, I use a Shield TV product, you're going to have to look at the description on your phone. There's just no way around it. Sorry. And then we have a follow-up to it later on. I think this is a few days later. T-Mobile says hackers access to user data, but won't confirm that the Social Security breach of 100 million customers. And there's a reason that they're not going to confirm that, because it'll cost them a lot of money. It'll cost them a lot of money if there's legal, especially for a company this large, there's legal ramifications on what happens if somebody steals your data and what you have to do in certain scenarios. I believe that T-Mobile has to pay for credit monitoring if they did release Social Security information of 100 million customers. Well, if credit monitoring for a year is $10 a customer, that's not going to make your shareholders very happy. And it's not just of, if I remember correctly, it's not just of the ones that are stolen, it's of all your customers in an X amount of time, right? So being they are the world's third, or the U.S. nation's third largest cell phone provider, that's a big deal. So they're going to keep their trap shut. They're going to let the customers face all that bad stuff. And as we said already, the hackers are selling the data of Social Security numbers, driver's license info, phone numbers, names, and addresses, and EMEI numbers. So briefly, we'll go over this. T-Mobile is looking into allegations that a hacker stole 106 gigabytes. So if typically these hackers don't have like unlimited bandwidth into the system. So if they stole 106 gigabytes, they were there for a while. And shame on you, T-Mobile, for not putting the right tools in place, or hiring the right people to put the right tools in place, or for hiring the managers that can't hire the right people that can't hold the accountability in place, right? So I'm a firm believer in, it's not always the engineer's fault. If the managers, if the managers or the executives can't hold the right people accountable, get rid of the management. I think they're the bigger problem more than the engineer. So in a statement, T-Mobile says it's aware of claims. T-Mobile has been working around the clock to investigate the situation. I bet, because if you're a shareholder of T-Mobile, it's gonna cost your company a lot of money. Period. Right. So, and customers are going to lose faith in you as a provider. And when you're that big, you have certain obligations to the country and to your customers. So we have determined that unauthorized access to some T-Mobile data occurred. They don't say what. However, we have not yet determined that there is any personal customer data involved. We are confident that the entry point used to gain access has been closed. So what? And we are continuing our deep technical review of the situation across our systems to identify the nature of any data that was illegally accessed. They didn't really say anything there. They said we patched the hole that we put in place, and we don't really know what was taken past that because, again, you don't have the right tools, you don't have the right people, you don't have the right managers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, somebody like T-Mobile for us, I would, if T-Mobile came to C14G and said, "Hey, we want your services," that would crush us. We're just not big enough. We can't handle their bandwidth. We would not be a good solution for them. That being said, these are enterprise solutions. They certainly have the money to hire the right staff and put the right products in place. So shame on them for not doing it. This is becoming something where if insurance companies don't start holding these businesses accountable, then these businesses are just going to say, well, what's the point? We're not going to get hacked, is what almost every single ransomware person that I know, every ransomware company I know has said, and then they're hacked. It's really, and now that we have ransomware as a service, which I mentioned in last week's broadcast, is something that you can pay $250 for, and you can go infect a company of your choice, or a person of your choice, or a political campaign of your choice. So for $250, you can get in, ruin someone's existence, and possibly even shut down their company or whatever their cause is altogether. So it's all about accountability. Without consequence, nothing changes. So, and that's the problem, is that these businesses think that there is no consequence if we don't spend the right amount of money, and then by the time that it hits, it's too late. I mean, your shareholders are going to get upset in this scenario. Your customers are going to get upset in this scenario, and your company's going to lose a lot of money, way more than it should have if you put the right tools and the right people in place and continued training inside the company while these employees were with you. Because from an employee level, as I always have a tendency to mention, if I stay with an employer year over year, I'm losing 3% of my value based on inflation here in the United States, right? So if I make $200,000 one year, my $200,000 next year is not $200,000, it's 197. Actually, it's 190. If I could do math, 194, because I've lost 3% of $200,000. So that's going to continue year over year over year. Again, that's just an average. So if you're a company, you should do COLA adjustments, which is cost of living adjustments. So I don't know why people say COLA and then adjustment, but you should do COLA adjustments and provide raises on whatever you think is fair as a company. That being said, if your middle management isn't doing their job, I'm a firm believer in, there's the door. We need somebody that's competent in what they're doing. So unfortunately, those people are also hard to find. A reporter at Motherboard spoke with the hackers. We're going to quickly browse over this to see if there's any other information that I haven't said already. The breach was done to retaliate against the U.S. for kidnapping and the torture of John Bin in Germany by the CIA and Turkish intelligence agent in 2019. The hacker allegedly told, we did it to harm the U.S. infrastructure. I'm going to go with no, you did that to bring money in your pocket. Again, a lot of the times that these hacker groups will just say this, and just to get them off the scent. Right? They don't have the FBI or the NSA to be tracing something else. So, going forward, also against the FBI, CIA, and Justice Department in November, that he said that he was being investigated for various cybercrimes, including participation in a document conspiracy. He is a U.S. citizen but lived in Turkey and claimed that he had been tortured and spied on for being an alleged member of the Islamic State militant group. He denied being a member of the group in his lawsuit. The unnamed hacker later spoke to Google Computer to say that they gained access to T-Mobile systems through production, staging, and development servers 2 weeks ago. So they were in the system for 2 weeks. Production, staging, and development servers. These are all steps of the product development pipeline. You start with development, you move into staging, and then you move that into production. It's also how you update products as well. So this could have been anything. It could have been a front end for anything, a front end for putting in checks, a front end for putting in new computers. It could have been a customer service. There's millions of things that it could have been. So unfortunately, because these have a tendency, a lot of developers don't like the fact that they don't have full access to everything. Too bad. Realistically, if I'm putting my whole entire company at fault or in production, you're getting multi-factor authentication, whether you like it or not. I don't care how big of a pain in the butt it is. Will you tell me a realistic timeline if this affects your productivity? and we'll adjust accordingly before we get started, right? So if you come back and you say, oh, every time I connect to the SSH server, every time I write a database, or every time I have to go do this or check this out in the repository, I have to do two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. Okay, come up with a realistic timeline over a month. How many hours in that month, or just say a week, do you think that impacts your productivity? And explain to me, right? Two-factor authentication is going to a cell phone, going to a key fob, putting something in. You're looking at maybe 30 seconds per incident that you have to do that. So at the end of a week, did you use an hour? Maybe, right? So it is a pain in the butt, but there's reasons that these are put in place. They also hacked into an Oracle database server that has customer data on the inside. This could be a SQL injection. We don't really know how they did it. There are plenty of good YouTube videos out there about users can get into databases of their databases, and for instance, if you have a payload that you need a form or whether your package or whatever that case may be, they can figure out that new key is, spoof the key, create a new account, give it admin privileges without ever being an admin, and the next thing you know, they're in your database. So to prove it was real, the attacker shared a screenshot of their SSH connection, look at that, to a production server running Oracle with reporters from Bootleg Computer. They did not try to ransom T-Mobile because they already had buyers online, according to their interview with the. Okay, so they're saying we could have done ransomware, which is lock out their entire systems. Would probably would have cost more than whatever they're selling it for. They're only selling it for $270,000. If they did, T-Mobile, one, probably would have paid because they can afford to pay, and two, T-Mobile would be severely down for operations. Again, given that they have a backdoor SSH connection without a VPN, which means that they probably use so the default port for SSH is 22 on TCP. I'm gonna guess that some hacker was like, you know what, I'll do 7922. No one will ever guess that, and we'll allow it from everywhere. Okay, that's a backdoor. That's not how you're supposed to do it. What you should be doing in that scenario is connecting to a VPN, then going to a machine that's approved to connect to SSH connections from that machine to that server if that's what you need to do, and that's how you do it. That's the only way to do it, right? Period. If you don't like that, there's the door. If you try to get around it, I'll fire both. Whoever allowed you to get around it, you have to have consequence, otherwise nothing changes, right? T-Mobile has been hacked multiple times over the last few years. In January, they announced their fourth data breach in 3 years. After incidents in August 2018, November 2019, and March 2020. And now we have essentially June 2021, July 2021, August. I don't know exactly. When was this article? Probably end of July, beginning of June. Yeah, this is August 16th, right? And if they were in for 2 weeks, that puts them right in the beginning of August. Plus, we don't know how long they were sitting around. So end of July, beginning of August. So T-Mobile obviously is just doing the bare minimum for security. If this is their fourth breach in 3 years, they're not changing anything. They feel that they could just deal with the consequences of it. So hopefully they're held accountable. Hopefully we could see change coming. So that being said, as a reminder, this is a live web stream that we do on YouTube every week at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It goes for about an hour. It's gone a little bit over an hour. It's gone a little bit under an hour. I try to stay around that hour time mark, and you can participate in the group chat. We will look at it, communicate back, answer questions, give examples, whatever we can do to try to help. So you could find it, obviously, if you're here on the stream, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which I believe is under Managed Security. C14G is our name. We have, obviously, if you're on this link, you should be able to click on the channel name and then subscribe from there. And any sharing of this information would be gladly appreciated, because we're literally here to try to help companies continue to grow and continue to expand and continue to do all the things that are right that small business wants to do, but without possibly losing everything because of one bad employee that clicked a URL or one bad website they visited or whatever the case may be. There are dozens or hundreds of scenarios that can literally destroy your entire company, including not having good backups and including having to well, just pay for all this stuff, right? So as any small business owner will tell you, payroll is very expensive. So I understand the desire to have one person that's very good at computers do 3 different jobs, but if you have the profitability for it, I would strongly suggest you reinvest in your company based on profit and hire somebody just for cybersecurity, especially if you have cloud-based services such as AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, whatever the case may be, Linode, which is something we use. I would hire a cybersecurity engineer before I hire somebody for applications, as an example, depending on what your business is. Cybersecurity is absolutely something that is pretty much insurance for your company to keep running, and just it's the future, whether you like it or not, unfortunately. Again, we are C14G. We are a cybersecurity solutions company. We provide solutions for small and medium business. We do not try to interfere with the enterprise sector because the enterprise sector is very concrete in the way they do things, and they don't like to think outside the bubble very often. It's just not a good customer base for us. That being said, we like to help startups and other small companies. So the next one is from threatpost.com. Cyber attackers are embracing CAPTCHA to hide phishing and malware. This one is kind of a pain. Nobody likes these things, especially the one where you have to like pick the crosswalk, right? That darn stupid crosswalk is super annoying because it never gets it right. Or highlight the street light. Okay, well, do you want me to get the arm of the street light too, or just the street light itself? And then you have to do it 3 or 4 times. Meanwhile, you're just trying to get a recipe for how to make donuts or something like that, right? So continuing cyber attackers embracing CAPTCHA to hide phishing and malware. I turn on highlighting, so now we know. And it gives you an example of what CAPTCHA is right here. These are CAPTCHA as well. But CAPTCHA protected malicious URLs are snowballing lately, researchers have said. Cyber attackers are using Google's reCAPTCHA, aka the I'm not a robot function, and fake CAPTCHA-like services to obscure various phishing and other campaigns, according to researchers. So by now, if you don't know, phishing is literally what the term says. You're trying to portray yourself as something else. You're phishing, you're putting out a wide net trying to find people to infect or run viruses against the company or try to get private information out of. I mean, what phishing is one thing that looks like another, but that's also spoofing. So yeah, that area has gotten great over the years. So anyways, to obscure various phishing and other campaigns, according to researchers. There are signs, however, that those evasion efforts may be losing their efficacy. CAPTCHAs are familiar to most internet users as the challenges that are used to confirm that they're human, right? The Turing test-ish puzzles usually involve clicking on a photo in a grid that contains a certain object or typing a word presented as blurred or distorted text to prove that you're real, obviously. The idea is to weed out bots on e-commerce and online account sites that serve the same purposes for crooks, right? So they're trying to protect their stuff. So now what they're saying is hiding phishing content behind the CAPTCHA prevents security crawlers from detecting malicious content and adds a legitimate look to phishing login pages. So a crawler is a software tool that just will go across the whole website. It'll look at the meta tags, and I'll show you an example here. I think I can hit, I hit the wrong button, so please hold. I do that all the time. So a crawler, as an example, if we hit F12, you should be able to see if it's going to come up. There we go. It takes a while because I'm streaming at the same time, so I apologize. But when you look at a website, there is a ton of stuff going on in the background, right? So if we look at the inspector here, this is just built, I'm using Firefox. Chrome offers the same feature. I don't know what the hotkey button is. I hit F12 to look at this data. And as we wait for it to load, because boy, is it taking a while, you'll start to see the background material of this website. It'll have the header. It'll have all the tags associated with the site. It'll have all the links. It'll have just about everything, right? So it's all broken down. All this stuff right here, and each one of these you can scroll down and it'll be something else, right? So if I click the expand button, there's more stuff behind it. There's another division class behind it. I can expand that, and there's all these links behind it. So what a crawler does, because that was the point of this, is it goes through all these web pages, what they look like raw, and it tries to find things that would look like a phishing attack, right? So if I have citibank.com, but I switch one of the I's out, it's more spoofing, but I switch one of the I's out, a one for a one, that's a spoof, but I'm fishing for information. I'm fishing to see if who I can catch, right? So that being said, the CAPTCHA in this area would prevent most crawlers from being able to see it because they can't get behind the CAPTCHA. So that being said, I say that a lot. It is a pretty clever way to get around it. Here's for an example, in one of our web page targets. For an example, in one case, a web page targeting Microsoft credentials using the same key as a separate URL used for an Apple ID phishing, right? So how to find CAPTCHA's protected malicious websites, since what I said probably didn't make that much sense. The good news is that Unit 42 researchers said that it is possible to detect phishing pages through the association of CAPTCHA keys. The page housing the CAPTCHA will have sub-requests that can be parsed into HTML, which reveals that the reCAPTCHA API key used in the URL parameters, researchers said. API is application programmable interface, so it lets you do things to the program without having to rewrite the program. You can pull data from it, push data to it. You can manipulate data. That's why it's called an API. They're pretty common in applications today. Such identifiers can be parsed out and searched for on other pages. Quote, we see many malicious campaigns reuse CAPTCHA service keys, either to simplify their malware infrastructure, or to avoid being blocked by the legitimate reCAPTCHA provider for creating too many CAPTCHA accounts and keys. Right, so the whole point of a CAPTCHA is to prove you're human, and then once you do that, you can get behind and see what's behind the curtain. But that key exchange is literally just, it's creating in theory, randomized keys, so no two are alike. And what this page is saying is that they just take the key and they share it all over different web pages to make it look legitimate. That's how you can detect to see if it's one of these CAPTCHAs that are using phishing on the other end. Sorry, big breath there. The next thing we're going to go to is from securityaffairs.co. Pretty good site. They have a lot of good information out there. We constantly refer to articles here. But Magnibber ransomware operators use PrintNightmare exploits to infect Windows servers. If you're not familiar, this is more on the internal side of cybersecurity. It's not from the outside in. Essentially it is, because you're trying to prevent somebody from the outside to use this exploit. But it's something that's on the inside of your network that can be exploited. So the PrintNightmare is a security flaw in the spooler service, which is what controls printing, right? So if I'm on a Windows machine and I want to print my Word document or my Excel document, I hand that service off to the server's spooler. The spooler then handles how to print it based on whatever that document is. That spooler and its service have a huge exploit in it, which can give users remote access to a machine or to a server because it's just insecure, right? It's been this way for a long time. Microsoft has had problems with it in the past, and they continue to patch it and fix it, but more than likely, given how many times this has been exploited, you would have to completely rewrite the print spooler, which would definitely affect probably millions of companies and products. It would not be an easy thing to fix. More than likely, it's just a built-in security flaw. Though Microsoft claims they fix it, it doesn't really ever seem to be fixed. So this article is touching on how ransomware operators are using that PrintNightmare exploit to infect Windows servers. This is important to pretty much all sectors: enterprise, small business, startup, whatever, because we all have a tendency to share Windows printers or have a print server on a Windows machine. Here we use Linux for a lot of things. We use Windows on some extent, but our print server is not on Windows, so it really doesn't affect us, right? So threat actors behind the I can't stand these names sometimes. The Magnibber Ransomware are using PrintNightmare exploits to attack in attacks aimed at Windows servers. Correct. Windows servers are not that secure compared to like mainframe, but they also don't cost really much to operate in mainframe. Threat actors behind the ransomware are exploiting the PrintNightmare flags, and here's the actual. So you can click on the actual vulnerability exploit, set the vulnerability exploit, and it'll take you. This is to security affairs now, but it'll take you to. I can't remember what that exploit is. So what I'm hoping is it'll take you to the Microsoft exploiter that is actually serving the CVEs. There is a database for CVEs. Just Google CVE, the database, and find a whole plethora of them. So the PrintNightmare flaws reside in the Windows Print Spooler service, print drivers, and the Windows Point and Print feature. A few hours ago, gotta turn on my highlighting. Sorry, it's the OCD in me. We'll go with yellow this time. I like yellow. We've been doing blue this whole time. Threat actors behind are to infect Windows servers, and right away, of course, it screws up on me. There we go. Oh, no. I don't know. Oh, there we go. Yeah, sometimes I'm too fast. It has a tendency to freak out on more websites than others based on how it's written in the background. It has a tendency to grab all. Anyways, the PrintNightmare flaw resides in the Windows Print Spooler service, print drivers, and Windows Point and Print features. Let me take a look real quick, make sure our stream is going all right over here. Make sure you can still hear me. The last 2 weeks we've had some audio issues, so I do apologize. Those do seem to be resolved, so yay to that. A few hours ago, and this was written August 12th, so at the time now, so it was about 6 days ago. A few hours ago, Microsoft published a security advisory to warn customers of another remote code execution zero vulnerability, tracked as blah, 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 that resides in the Windows Print Spooler component. And again, if I hover over it, this one actually does take you to the Microsoft security exploits. So because I'm on the highlighting service, you can't see it's a URL. But if we click on that URL, you're going to see. We'll let that. We'll come back to it because my computer's doing too much at once, apparently. A local attacker could exploit the vulnerability to gain system privileges, and the reason that that's capitalized is that Windows accounts all have system account. And the reason that system is so important is because it is almost as big as domain administrator. System can do almost anything it wants. It can handle your print spooler, it can delete things. Usually there's some things that it can't do on the domain side, but it has full administrative access. So for instance, when I write a script that gets run during a GPO or anytime there's a startup script, the system account prevents me from having to ask for administrative credentials. It's something that's done automatically during startup. It uses the system account by default. So it's a big deal. The local attacker could exploit the vulnerability to gain system privileges on vulnerable systems. Microsoft said that the only workaround for this issue is to disable the print spooler service. That's, again, not good. There's not many print spooler services out there. You can move to a Linux spooler. It's going to make life significantly more complicated in your environment just because it's not as easy as Microsoft's print spooler. But I don't know how they're going to fix that in the future. If we go back to that CVE, we're going to go look at what some of the things that it has to do. It was released August 11th, 2021. There's the MITRE actual CVE. Attack vector low. Confidentiality is high. You can expand all these to get further information. Integrity is high. Attack vector. This metric reflects the context by which vulnerability exploitation is possible. The better score, the base score increases the more remote, logically and physically an attacker in order to exploit. Now, the problem we have with live stream is sometimes you have to blow your nose. So, sorry, I'll be right back. Surprised I don't have any in here. All right. Yay! I apologize. So, uh, anyways, that's here. You can find out the execution summary, executive summary. A remote code execution vulnerability exists when the Windows print spooler service improperly performs privileged file operations. An attacker who successfully exploited this vulnerability could run arbitrary code with the system privileges. Arbitrary code is anything that they want to run. An attacker could then install programs. They could also view, change, and delete data or create new accounts with full user rights. Again, the system account is a big one. The workaround for this vulnerability is stopping and disabling the print spooler service. So let's go back here, make sure things are okay. So anyways, and then it says, here's your workaround. Basically, stop the spooler. It's recommending here's how you do it, and then you can frequently ask questions about it. Again, this is just, I wanted to bring it up because we've been hearing about the print spooler service for a while, this attack. And again, in order to address the PrintNightmare flaws, Microsoft implemented the same changes to the default point and print default behavior. Non-administrative users will no longer be able to do the following using point and print without an elevated control prompt UAC. If you're not using UAC, stop living in XP time. You fire the person that decided you don't need user access control. You absolutely need user access control. Anyways, install new printers using drivers on a remote computer. This is what will happen because of the security change, right? The normal non-administrative users will now no longer be able to install new printers using drivers on a remote computer or server, or update existing printer drivers using drivers from remote computer or server, right? A normal user doesn't need to be doing this anyways, but at the same time they do. If you use a print server, not a print spooler, but a print server as a dedicated resource, this can all be done with an administrative account, so you could kind of get around that depending on how you share your printers. A lot of the time, as I mentioned, a lot of people will pick the easiest method because it's just the easiest, but it's not usually the safest. So, CrowdStrike recently observed a malicious activity associated with, I sometimes hate this thing, a threat that has been active since 2017. In the recent wave of attacks, the threat actors attempted to trigger the PrintNightmare vulnerability on systems belonging to victims in South Korea. And then we have a quote, CrowdStrike recently observed new activity related to its 2017 ransomware family known as Magnibur. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. Using the PrintNightmare vulnerability on victims in South Korea. Thank you for saying the same thing twice, Scott. That's me. On July 13th, CrowdStrike successfully detected and prevented attempts at exploiting the PrintNightmare vulnerability, protecting customers before any encryption takes place, reads the post published by CrowdStrike. And then we're done with the quote now. The experts discovered that once compromised, a server exploiting a PrintNightmare flaw, Magnibur drops an obfuscated DLL loader. Dynamic link library is what DLL stands for. It's for programming, or it's for system integration. There's a few things, but long story short, it's a file that lets you do a lot of things. Magnibur drops an obfuscated DLL loader, then injects it into a process and later unpacks the DLL loader to perform local file traversal and encryption of the infected system. So yes, you could use it to run ransomware. The ransomware drops a ransom note that does not reveal anything about the ransomware operators. It only provides instructions to, there's a typo, contact the threat actors for negotiation. That should be contact, not cantact. According to Bleepy Computer, Magnibur's activity spiked in the last 30 days. Experts reported almost 600 submissions of the ID ransomware platform. Researchers believe the other ransomware gangs will start using PrintNightmare exploits in their operations, and they will. It's an easy target. CrowdStrike estimates that the PrintNightmare vulnerability, coupled with the deployment of ransomware, will likely continue to be exploited by other threat actors. We encourage organizations to always apply the latest patches and security updates to mitigate known vulnerabilities and to adhere to security best practices to strengthen their security posture against threats and sophisticated advisories. CrowdStrike concluded. Again, absolutely, you should be doing patch management. If you are manually doing patch management, you're not doing patch management correctly. This can be automated. You will likely have to purchase a tool to automate it, but there's no reason you have to have your engineers up at 2 in the morning on a Thursday or whatever your patch management day is. And also, if you are doing patch management, you should be doing it in a staged platform, right? So put a few power users at your test group on the workstation side, put a few non-vital servers as test servers on your production side, run those updates on them, see if they make, stage it out a week or 2 weeks, and then actually supply it to the rest of the servers. This can't be done, I think, with WSUS. You have to go get a tool like LabTech. Automate is called something else now, but that's what we used in the past. It was a pretty good tool, to be honest with you. I forgot who owns LabTech now, but I'm sure if you do a Google search, you can ConnectWise owns LabTech. So the ConnectWise, I forgot what they call it now, service, right? So they combined all of these. There's a CRM agent for ConnectWise. There's a operations agent for remote desktop. There's all types of service agent. So they offer one product. They are pretty expensive. When we got a quote, I think it was $30,000 for a company of 200 employees or so. So they can be pricey, and that's every year, I think that cost was. But don't quote me on that price. I don't work for them. I'm not sponsored by them. I don't know anything about their pricing structure for your scenario. That's just me guessing off the top of my head. TrendMicro warns customers. This is the next article. Let me check how long are we at. We're at 56 minutes, so I'm going to browse through these pretty quickly. Again, we have securityaffairs.co. TrendMicro warns customers of zero-day attacks against its products. Zero-day, yeah. So we're going to go pick a different color. I didn't like yellow. We'll go green. TrendMicro warns customers of a zero-day attack against its products. If you don't know what a zero-day is a brand new virus that has not been detected via signatures, right? So if I write a virus and it gets exploited and I push it out to 1,000, this is just a random scenario, I infect a bunch of people with it, my virus now has a signature, and that signature to all the antiviruses will be what's used to prevent my virus from getting through to the next group of machines. A 0-day means that this virus has not been detected before. It's a 0-day. It's the day that no antivirus have a signature for it yet. That's why WatchGuard, we offer through WatchGuard, they use AI to determine things that are possible 0-day. You can put it out on the APT cloud, Advanced Persistent Threat Cloud, and it'll run that file or whatever, that code against a fake virtual machine, and it'll see the impacts of it. And there's plenty of things we can do to help mitigate things like this from happening for a 0-day. But again, nothing's 100%. There's always the possibility somebody might write something so terrific that it cannot be determined by AI, even though AI is actually pretty great technology for the cybersecurity sector. Which WatchGuard products, we are a certified WatchGuard product or partner. We only recommend WatchGuard products for security. We think they're that great compared to the other Cisco, Fortinet, other tools Juniper that we've used. I like WatchGuard. I like their tool set. It is the best balance between usability and they also have the best licensing structure for what you get, in my opinion. Security firm, I don't know why it's firms. TrendMicro is warning its customers of of attacks exploiting 0-day vulnerabilities on its Apex One and Apex One as a service products. Right. So if you're using Apex One and Apex One as a service, be aware that what I'm about to say is definitely going to pertain to you. Right. So long story short, on July 28th, which is about a month ago, TrendMicro released security patches for multiple incorrect permissions, assignment privileges, escalations, incorrect permission preservation, authentication bypass, that's a mouthful, arbitrary file upload, and local privilege escalation vulnerabilities to its Apex One system. There's the security exploits to it. There are no links. But you can go look up the CVE numbers. The vulnerabilities affect the TrendMicro Apex One on-premise and security as a service, which is usually cloud-based on Windows. The company did not share info about the attacks in the wild that exploited the above vulnerabilities, but be aware that they're out there. So if you're using Apex One in any regard as a service or as a standalone product, be warned that this is out there. Go look at those CVEs. Again, the descriptions for these links will be in the URL in the YouTube video. So, and then one thing I wanted to point out, only because I've had to do this way too many times, and this is Panda is now owned by WatchGuard, but Panda Security is actually a pretty reputable company, and they have an article out here on how to recover from ransomware attacks posted a couple 10 days ago or so. Sorry, 2 days ago. It's not the 28th, it's the 18th. Ransomware is devastating. Absolutely. It's already got to do the thing we always do here. We'll use green again. I like green. Here we go. Ransomware is devastating. When critical files are infected and encrypted, a company may be forced to shut down, perhaps permanently. They do provide a link. Absolutely, companies are required to shut down because they don't have any way to generate income. They don't have any ways to help their customers. It's just not a good sign one way or another. But ransomware can attack anyone. It's true, it can. As I mentioned before, ransomware is just any exploit available on the internet, whether you're a business or whether you're a person. It can attack anybody, including decent law-abiding citizens like you. Pushing that fear hard. Unfortunately, in the security business, you do have to push fear because that's essentially what we're trying to do. We're trying to prevent you from losing a big time. We're trying to prevent you from being forced to shut down. Because it's devastating with precious memories and photographs along with important digital paperwork, potentially lost forever. Unfortunately, ransomware is rapidly becoming the weapon of choice for cyber criminals, despite desperate people will pay for ransoms quickly, and in case you got Panda security article, they do. I've been part of companies that decide it's better to pay the ransom to regain access to their files. Easy money for hackers, which is why we are seeing more of these malware attacks and why you need to know how to deal with the infection before it becomes. And given that we're at 1 hour and 2 minutes, I'm just going to browse these briefly. You want to contain the infection, and ransomware works through your computer, encrypting files as it goes. The minute you suspect your computer has been infected, it should be disconnected from your network. I don't know what this must be geared towards home users, but absolutely disconnect it from the network. Turn it off if it's a server, as well as preventing the spread. Report the incident. Whether you choose to investigate or not, you should report it to the police. In this case, you probably want to report it to the FBI if you're in the United States. They can help you. They do have resources if it's going to impact you. That being said, you might have to pay for those resources. You might have to wait because I know for a fact that they are just bogged down with cyber criminal activities. I would love to work for the FBI if you guys are listening, but last I checked, you guys aren't hiring. So anyways, report the incident, recover from a backup. Yep, that's a big one, but you'll be down while you recover from a backup. You cannot do fragmented restores. To all the people, this is for geared towards home users, but to all the managers, middle management, or executives who think that they can recover from a backup halfway and then just run on the stuff you need, you can't. Don't even try to do it. You're going to lose so much time and so much data. If you have to restore it all. Yes, you'll be down for an extra day or two, but the amount of effort and the amount of time and the amount of risk involved with running in a fragmented state, it's just, you're gonna burn out your employees, you're gonna end up back at square one, you're gonna lose time. Don't do this. It's literally so difficult. Patch and repair, absolutely be doing that. A lot of companies don't do that. If they do it so manual that it's basically not worth doing at all. Plus your employees will burn out. And prepare for the future. There's a very good chance that you will face another malware attack soon. If you don't know this, and I've single-handedly talked to people that have ransomed companies, once they pay, you are on a list that is buyable. I can go out and purchase a list that says what companies are likely to pay if I hit them with ransomware, right? So, and if you pay once, you're likely to pay again. That's just the way it goes. Prepare yourself for now, and you will find it easier to deal with the infection or to avoid it completely. On the business side, this means lock down your firewall, stop poking back holes or back doors, use two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, use an authenticator like the Microsoft Authenticator in Office 365 or the Google Authenticator for Gmail or whatever the case may be, right? The reason you should use the Authenticator more than an SMS, which is a text message, is that text messages can be spoofed very easily. So that doesn't do me any good if somebody can just go get my spoofed code, and then I've lost the point of multi-factor authentication. So make sure that you have a reliable backup system. Yes, be aware that having a backup system is nice, but knowing how long it takes to realistically restore is more important. If you lose your top five, depending on how big you are, let's say you lose half of your operational servers, how long is it going to take to restore them? Not from a snapshot, because snapshots can miss some of these things, but from a bare metal restore. That's what you should count your recovery time on, a bare metal restore. Snapshots are a fantastic technology. They do things that are just unheard of based on, if you've ever looked at the snapshot algorithm, it's very cool how it determines what's changed and what hasn't on a programming algorithmic look at things. But realistically, if you have an operations manual or a disaster recovery operations manual with expected times in it, plan for bare metal or have both, right? You can always try the snapshot first. But the downside of that is if you start operating off that snapshot and you realize, didn't fix everything, I missed this one system file, or this one thing got hosed, you're going to have to do a bare metal, and now all that time that you've done doing the snapshot is gone. So bare metal restore would be referring to if you're not virtualized, right? So if you are virtualized, what I mean is completely restore from that virtualized bare metal. You don't have to wipe out your entire VMware instance or Proxmox instance, whatever you use. So again, this article was geared a little bit more towards home. Panda is now part of WatchGuard. You can see a WatchGuard brand here. We are C14G. You can find us at c14g.com. And again, our goal is to help small and medium business not become the next article. We want to make sure your company can grow. We want to make sure that you don't have to pay more than likely $200,000 for a security team's payroll. That's a small budget. And we want to make sure that you can grow at the right pace under your terms. And yeah, that's it. So thank you, everybody. Again, this is every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It goes for about an hour. And thank you very much. Have a great time, everyone. Bye. And now I got to actually stop it.